Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public, and welcome to the Stratford-upon-Avon Town Council Community Services Pre-Decision Consultation. The first item on the agenda is to appoint a chairman for the Community Services Committee. And it is the norm that the Deputy Mayor for 2021-22 has the option to automatically be afforded the position as chairman. And I'm very honoured to announce that the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Jill Cleave, has decided to take on this opportunity. So congratulations, Jill, and I will now hand over to your good self.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next item on that is to elect a deputy chair for this position, for this role. Have we got any nominations? Mr. Mayor?
I would like to nominate Councillor Howe, please.
Thank you. Could we, I know we have to approve this, I believe, at full council, but could we just have a vote for Councillor Howe, the deputy chair now? Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Before we move on to the next item, if I could request, we have a presentation that's 10.7 on the agenda. I would just like to, because we have Mary Darwin from Stratford District Council here to present, if we could bring that agenda item to straight after item number 6 this evening, if we could just vote on that, that would be very helpful. If you're happy to bring that forward. Brilliant, that's great. Thank you, we will do that. So we'll get to you as soon as possible. Item number 2, to accept apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
The only apology is Councillor Wall.
Thank you very much. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? I will just note at this point, when we talk about the defibrillators, that I have been approached as well as about Stratford High, but and obviously it is a passion and a mission of mine, so I will mention that now. No others? Thank you. Item number 4, to receive any written requests for dispensation for disclosable pecuniary interests. We have none, so we do not have to grant any. Do we have any, for our agenda item number 6, do we have any public participation? I'll take that as a no, we do not. So we will move on from that straight to what is agenda item number 10.7, and we'll bring that forward to Mary, who has got a presentation for us on the Community Halls Initiative. Mary.
Jill, am I sharing the presentation, or is that being shared by one of you?
We're about to do
We're
that
about
now.
to press the button.
Thank you.
Just checking.
You want it now?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. Oh. No. Wait a minute. Back. Go back. Go back. Hold on. Press 1.
Apologies, we're just.
Oh. Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's.
Yes, I can. Yep.
Slideshow.
Go from the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. So will I just ask you to next slide, please? That's okay. Or can I move? You need to move it on for me, presumably.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Okay. Thanks very much.
Are you happy starting now, or did you want to go back to?
No. Oh, yeah. That's not the first slide. Sorry. Yeah. So hello everyone. I'm Mary Darwin. I'm part of the communities team at Stratford District Council, and I'm here tonight to talk through the proposal for the Community Builder project that I think you initially discussed back in April. My slides will outline the project proposal, which I hope you've seen and possibly have a copy of. Sorry, could you go on to the next slide, please? Thank you. The project will focus on the communities of Bishopton and Clopton, which are two of the district's most deprived communities, as stated in the Index of Multiple Deprivation 2019. The Community Builder post will work with communities in the catchment areas for both Bishopton Community Centre and the Ken Kennett Community Centre. Next slide, please. Thank you. More deprived areas tend to have higher levels of social exclusion, so unemployment, financial hardship, social isolation and poor mental well-being. And the pandemic has only accentuated those issues. There are two key assets in these communities, Bishopton Community Centre and the Ken Kennett Centre, and both are run by a limited number of dedicated volunteers. Next slide, please. The Centre for Progressive Policy predicted in April of last year that our district would face the fourth biggest economic hit of all local authorities in the UK from coronavirus. And many of the district's businesses are in tourism, hospitality and retail, which are some of the sectors that have been hardest hit over the last 18 months or so. The table shows universal credit claims for those in employment and not in employment in March of this year. And the communities the project is focusing on are among those with the highest universal credit claims. The lower super output areas, which are referenced in the table, are part of the communities of Bishopton and Clopton as they are locally understood. So, for example, Maybird, the Avenue, they fall into those locally understood communities. And I hope I'm not teaching anyone to suck eggs or whatever the phrase is, but LSOAs, lower super output areas, are areas of about 650 households, or around about a population of 1,500, just to mention that. Next slide, please. Continuing the evidence of needs. So back in 2019, Orbit Housing commissioned a survey to ask residents in Bishopton and Clopton about their communities. And the findings showed that there was a lack of community participation and that residents felt a need for an improved sense of community. Next slide, please. So to try to increase resident participation and encourage resilience among the communities, the community builder will be a recognisable presence in both communities. They will work with residents to determine what they want to happen locally, to help residents set up new groups as identified by residents. The community builder will promote mental and physical well-being, encourage volunteering and support both community centres to be more sustainable. Next slide, please. So the project aims to leave a legacy of a more robust community with a bigger say in what happens locally. And the aim is to pilot the proposal and evaluate the general idea and to demonstrate the value of a collaborative approach through partnership funding and working with community representatives on the project board. And within 6 months of the project being operational, the intention is to write a lottery application, and that would hopefully enable the project to be replicated in other areas of the district where there is evidence of need. Next slide, please. So we want to be able to evaluate the project and demonstrate that it works. We need clear, measurable outputs and outcomes, which will be monitored by the project board. So things like increasing the number of residents attending community activities, increasing the number of community groups, the increasing resident involvement in volunteering, which could be, being part of Clopton Community Action Group or the Bishopton Community Centre Committee, for example. We want to increase awareness in tools and services to support mental and physical well-being, and increase the number of community groups using the community centres. Next slide, please. With regard to the timescales, the aim is to get the proposal out to tender in August, ideally appoint a successful host for the project in October, and ideally that host would appoint the new community builder in December. So that's the timeline that we're hoping to work towards. Next slide, please. So funding has been committed or is being sought from the organisations on this slide. We need just over 66,000 for the 18-month pilot project. And this is it's a collaborative project with community involvement. Sorry, I didn't ask for the next slide, sorry. Thank you. So a collaborative project with community involvement. The project board will have representatives from Clopton Community Action Group and Bishopton Community Centre Committee, and organisations that contribute funding to the project would be invited to sit on the project board. So, there might be some consideration as to who that would be. And Stratford Social Inclusion Partnership would be represented, and Warwickshire Cava's Development Officer will also sit on that project board. And there will be a project team which would guide and sort of support the daily work of the community builder. And I think that might be my last slide, is that? If you can move it. Yeah, so any questions? I've rattled through that quite quickly. I need to just try and...
The boss has, but who else is doing it? Is Jill looking at the screen? I think Jill will be on mute to say do. What are we meant to do now?
I can see a few hands up, so I don't know whether I should ask for questions or...
Jill, you're on mute. Jill, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was just waiting for them to stop sharing the screen, but yeah, we'll get started. So, Vic, can you stop sharing?
There we go.
There you go. Thank you very much. Yeah, a few questions. First hand I did see up. Councillor Rolfe, your hand was up. You've taken it down, have you?
I took it down because I was going to ask a question on how the project board would be made up, and then...
Okay, thank you. The next one, Councillor Voss, you were next.
I've got a series of questions, but it depends what other people want to ask. So this is for information at the moment. We've had a previous iteration of this presentation to us. Is it just for information for us, or are we being asked as the town council to do something?
Yes.
What's our involvement? Right, okay. So what are we being asked for?
Well, as previously, a contribution to the project. Apologies, I that wasn't included in the presentation, and it should have been. I think my understanding was that there was more information required from when this was discussed previously, but that the request remained the same essentially. So we're asking for a contribution towards the project of £5,000.
Okay, so that would now lead on to a series of other questions. And thank you for saying that. What are the other funders and who are, has it been worked out what other funders are providing, what other financial commitments there are? How that's broken down?
From some, so we have a commitment from Orbit Housing, and there is a commitment from the District Council. So some organisations have, you know, they've agreed the commitment. The Stratford Town Trust is one that we are, another organisation we're hoping to secure some funding from, and we're going to be approaching using the County Councillors Grant Fund for requesting smaller amounts.
Okay. And I'm sorry if I'm going to hog this for a little while, but presumably it's not possible now to share where funding commitments have been made, what level of funding commitments, if that's not something you, I'm guessing, would want to open up now. I don't want to put you on the spot here, Mari.
I think I would like to check that with the project board, if that's okay, Councillor Voss.
That's understandable.
I'm not entirely sure, if I'm honest.
Okay, so my next one is that I note that there's a project plan not yet public, but we're being asked to sign this off, agree this at our next meeting on the 26th, our town council meeting on the 26th of July. Yeah. But we won't have seen a project plan yet. So we're being asked to agree to something and the funding, which is all, you know, of course that ratchets up the, that doesn't seem to be right, if I may say so.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There is a project plan and I'm sure we can share that. I don't see any reason why the dates, you know, and the project plan couldn't be forwarded on to you.
Right, we've got timelines and they look fine, but the more detail we have, the better.
Oh yeah. There is a more detailed project plan. So we were trying to keep it sort of
okay. I think we'd
top
have to,
level.
Yeah, I understand. The next thing there is I'm presuming is it the successful host who will be produced, depending upon the tenders, be producing the job description?
It would indeed, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And then that comes to my next question. Until we see the job description, it's difficult to know if we, in my view, and this is possibly, you know, scarred by my commercial background, to decide whether it's appropriate to fund £5,000, because that depends upon the accountabilities and the targets that are being set, you know, what the objectives are. And you can't do that without the job description and the key accountabilities. And that will dictate whether or not, in my view, it's so. And of course, that's not coming till further down the line, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, and this is about the budget, 66,180. Do we have a breakdown of that in terms of wages, on costs, support, or other costs, which I think we also like to see, if possible, please?
Yeah, I can.
Sorry, Mary.
Yeah, no. It's perfectly legitimate questions. Again, I'm sure that's something. I haven't got that at the moment, but I'm sure that's something that I can send along with the project plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm just making a note of all these things.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Yeah, just a reminder for today, it is just a discussion on the progress of the Community Hall Initiative. We're not been asked to vote. The vote will go to full town council, I presume, as Councillor Voss said at the next meeting. So it would be great to have that information to hand before then. Next on this, Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that presentation, Mari. Can I ask what the in terms of the potential hosts, whether they've been approached, what the communication from them at the moment, and what
absolutely on the floor? Yeah, we have 3 hosts that are interested. So we approached 5. They were Spring Housing, P3, Citizens Advice South Warwickshire, Springfield Mind, and Cava. So they were the 5. We have had a no from Citizens Advice South Warwickshire, and a no from P3. So we've got 3 organisations who have said they are interested in tendering, who we think will, who have the background and experience to deliver the project. So we're hopeful that one of those 3 would be successful when it comes to scoring the tenders.
And the Town Trust is being approached as a funder, but not a host in this case. Is there any specific reasons for that?
Because, well, we didn't think that they were, I mean, because the project's got quite a strong focus on sort of, mental well-being, resilience, kind of that sort of angle. We didn't automatically think of the Town Trust, if I'm honest. And I know the organisations that Cava, Springfield Mind and Spring Housing are all different organisations, but they do all have an element of well-being attached to them, which I guess you could say the Town Trust does as well. So maybe that's something I take back to the project board and put to the project board as a possible alternative host, and there's no reason why we couldn't do that if that's something that you would be keen for me to do.
Yeah, I think those organisations have all got a different spin, haven't they? But yeah. I think in my mind, this in an ideal situation would sit with the Town Trust, but I might be completely speaking out of turn there, so I would have to obviously take that offline. But yeah, no, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Howe. Next we've got Councillor Coles.
Thank you. I was interested because obviously you sort of almost have to have this in place before you decide what you're applying for and then apply. Do you have any sort of idea of the level of funding that you would be applying for the lottery grant for? Because obviously £66,000 in place for somebody who has essentially got 2 roles. One is fundraising, one is delivering, if you like. I wondered if you had in place already the sort of idea of the level of funding you'd be applying for.
Not really, if I'm honest, because I think it would depend on how many years we were going for. And I'm not a I'm not a funding or bid writing expert. Our link has been with Chris Freeman, who's Cava's funding and development officer. So, I would say I would guess we would be trying to go for a 3-year project. And I don't know if Chris has in mind that it would be, I think he would be trying again to fund collaboratively, have a partnership funding approach. So it could be that we're applying to the lottery, but with funding from the district council, possibly funding from elsewhere. So I'm not entirely sure at the moment. Again, that's something I can take back to the project board and have a ask the question and come back to you on.
Because obviously this is a fairly substantial investment, so presumably you'd be wanting to see quite a return on what you were getting back from the lottery in terms of the projects you were looking to support.
Sorry,
well, I mean, over 18 months, you're putting in £66,000. We're not, if you only eventually end up getting lottery funding of 5,000, it's going to be a bit rather despondent making. So I just wondered, in terms of a rolling project over 3 years, would you be what you would be intending to?
I think it would be, it would have to be quite big numbers, otherwise there's not much point. And I think the project board would like to be quite ambitious. If the pilot is proved to be successful, then we could roll the idea out to other communities, I guess how much we we secure depends on how many communities could be supported. You know, it might be that we look at needs and decide that we're going to focus on one particular community going forward, you know, afterwards. It's sort of still, that's still up for debate, really.
Thank you.
Councillor Rolfe?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just confirm, so the £66,000 is for someone's salary for 18 months, is
Yes,
that correct?
it is.
Okay, so you talk about county councillors fund grants. Being a county councillor, I know all about these over the last 12 years. I'm not sure it would be eligible to pay for somebody's salary. You would have to talk to Amanda Wilson-Patterson about that.
Okay.
Certainly our grants go towards projects, but this is not a project, if you like.
Yeah.
And the other thing to consider, and I'm sure Councillor Fradgley is coming on in a minute, you will appreciate that we get £6,000 each. And we get asked by, you know, I mean, last year, I think between Jenny and I, we were asked for sort of £40,000 for £12,000. So, and actually what we normally do, from my point of view, even if it was eligible, to put, say, £1,000 to a £66,000 project is nothing really. But to put £1,000 to a £2,500 project means that it will get it off the ground. So I would take advice from Amanda Wilson-Patterson on that. And obviously you've got, out of the 3 county councillors, I don't represent either of those areas. Yeah. So, you know, obviously my money would go for something within my area. So, yeah, just look into that, because if you are relying on a certain amount of money, certainly the following year, if it's up and running, then we can look to get funding some projects, some individual projects. But I don't think it's eligible for somebody's salary.
Okay. And Kate, would it be eligible for, you know, if we got the 66,000 for the salary, could we apply to the County Councillors Grant Fund for some, what we would call maybe doing money, you know, for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Doing money, rental on a location, absolutely doing money. But I think salaries would be out of the remit. Again, we would need to check. I certainly, Jenny, and I certainly, I've never had that asked of us for somebody's salary ever.
Okay, that's really useful. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. Councillor Fradgley.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. One is, it seems fairly vague, slightly vague at the moment. There are lots of unknowns. When do you want a firm answer? Because it seems like that's a little way off. But if our next meeting is quite soon, we might feel it might be a little bit difficult to make the firm answer that possibly you're looking for in a short period of time. Is there any possibility of extending that time to make sure that all the information is in?
I mean, yes. You know, obviously you're not going to agree funding if you don't feel that you've got all the information that you need to make a decision. So, you know, from our point of view, we're looking to identify this 66,000 as soon as we can, because obviously without the agreed budget, we can't go out to tender. So we need
an egg, isn't it?
Yes, precisely. And I take the point Councillor Voss made earlier about you know, having the job description, targets, etc. You know, you want that information. I don't entirely know how we get around that, because I think we're quite keen that the host sort of supply, you know, we tell them to a certain extent what we want, but we want those organisations to bring some thinking to what they're going to offer the project. So I think that's something I need to take back to the project board with regard to the job description, because we had talked about the hosts producing that, because in some respects they're the ones that have that knowledge, you know about what that worker, what they would want that worker to do. So, perhaps when we've sent through the project plan and the budget breakdown, that that might provide a bit more information. But I understand that if you don't feel you've got all the information that you need, then you won't be able to make a decision. But if I can take back to the project board what it is you feel that you need, and then hopefully we can supply that before the meeting on the 26th, was it?
27th.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one more quick question? You might not be able to answer it because it's perhaps a little bit too detailed. I mean, the need that you're looking at ranges from preschool children to children who've had a really rough deal in education over COVID, to teenagers with very little to do in various areas because of all the various cutbacks over the last few years, to middle-aged people in job losses because of COVID. And we're also looking at loneliness in old age, but loneliness across the board as well because of the period we've been through. Will you be looking to address all that, or do you think you'll be actually focusing? Because one person looking at the whole range it's quite a big range of need
across two communities.
And across communities,
yes, no, it's a good point. And as you say, one person can only do so much. I think what we would encourage would be dialogue with residents, because it's about what residents feel the need is. Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess that could depend on who comes along to the engagement events, and how the community builder, engages with the communities to identify what they want. So, which could be tricky, because if you get all older people coming along to that event, that's where you're maybe having your focus. So it's something that they can't do everything, absolutely. You can't deal with the whole age range and all, every issue that exists. So I think there'll be some conversations, and that could be something that we ask in the as part of the tendering, how they would.
But there could be some signposting to what, like the children's centre, and actually using some existing services.
Absolutely, and we would expect that person, the community builder, to be engaging with this, the services stakeholders that are already in the community. They're not creating new things. Well, I say they are creating new things, but they need to be working with services, organisations, stakeholders that are already in the community and have those have those relationships with residents. It's about working together, not about setting up competing services for things that are already there. Absolutely not.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary.
Before I bring Councillor Voss in, that's something else to think about, as Councillor Fredgley just said, because Escape Arts and Lifespace have just received a grant from Warwickshire County Council to do community work and community and to delve into the community. And I know Hodgson's Green is one of the places they're doing it, and it is for community youth work. So we need to take into, again, you don't want to be working across each other. It's about working together.
Yeah, it's using the existing, what's already there, making sure people know about that. If these services are already existing. But where they don't, you know, if there's something missing, it's identifying that with residents and supporting residents to create those groups that are, or you know, whatever it might be that they feel that is lacking in the area. It's absolutely not about competing with what's already there. Definitely not. Thank you.
Councillor Voss, I think we'll take your questions for the last one.
So it's a bit of a sort of a feeling and a bit of a question, and I'll try not to be too muddled in this. This has changed slightly since we originally saw it, which was really about developing and supporting the community halls in Bishopton and Clopton. I see a lot of focus here on mental health. This is, as we all know, a huge crisis about to explode. And whilst it does significantly affect those who are most disadvantaged, it is not exclusively going to be a problem for those who, in fact, it is going to be, will encompass every age group, from the most socially advantaged to the least socially advantaged, to the most financially advantaged to the least financially supported. And I don't believe, I think I can see the core of a really good principle here. But if one of the initiatives to help groups was abseiling off the obelisk on Welcome Hills, or deep sea diving at the bottom of the lock in, you know, I don't know, you get where I'm coming from.
Yes.
That isn't something that therefore is essentially based on those two areas. And it's going to be a real problem saying to somebody who's outside of that area, well, you've got severe mental health, you know, issues and the sort of things you're outlining, but you don't fall into these areas, so go and find something else. And I think it makes the project, which could potentially, although I would like to see more detail on it, really important for a town like Stratford-upon-Avon, and that's what we're talking about. It needs to be more all-encompassing, because if we close our eyes to where mental health issues exist, they are not going to be resolved and they are not going to be supported. And that might be in the biggest, swankiest house, or it might be in the, as I say. So I'm uneasy about the way this has just been cornered into it. And if I were one of the host providers, I would want to offer a more holistic approach. And I'm not seeing it here. And I don't think it's about just 2 wards or 2 districts. However we want to do it. So I can see there's a huge problem, and it could be part of the solution, but it's not going to be about booking yoga sessions in Kennet. There's going to be so much more to it than that. And I think that we need to be aware of the fact that other areas in Stratford will equally be desperately in need as this mental health crisis evolves. And that may not please everyone, but in fact, it's not just about disadvantage, because there, by the grace of God, we all go. That's my feeling. Thank you. I know.
Good observation. You know, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think, you know, this project, this pilot, is about those 2 communities. You know, perhaps there's a way that we can include something around signposting for people outside those areas. You know, I really agree with everything that you're saying, but if we start to widen this out to a wider area, I think we dilute what we might be able to achieve in those 2 communities, and you know, perhaps in terms of the future funding, it becomes a, you know, we could make it a bigger project, but it is a pilot, and the idea is it is, you know, in 2 particular communities. But you know, I genuinely agree with what you're saying, and perhaps it's, you know, if someone is keen to join the you know, the new Dogs and Dudes group that sets up, or whatever, you know, idea they have, you know, if they are outside of the area, you know, is there a bit of flexibility? You know, I can't give that that kind of guarantee at the moment, but I would certainly expect that any host, any community builder would be signposting anyone who came to them who was outside the area to other services, which I know doesn't really answer what you know, it's not a solution, but I think we have to acknowledge that you know, this is a pilot. It can't be everything to all people. You know, just wish it could be, really.
Thank you. Can I just, before we finish, and thank you so much for your time, can I just check, because my first initial thoughts when it first came to us, and again, the ideas and the principle behind it are really good, was for it to be commercially sustainable in itself and end up raising its own funds with this person in. Is that now, are we moving away from that and making it more of a charity in a way, that fundraising towards it? And it's not going to be commercial, because I know, take the Cancan, I think, for example, obviously groups hire in and pay for the times there. So it's, but if we're looking at these other projects, that are we raising funds for those people to go in there so they're not paying the rent? That's where I'm a little bit, I'm not sure now. Is it going to be a commercially viable and we end up paying for itself, like the salaries? Is that the way forward now?
When you say for the salaries, or for the salary?
Well, yeah, so initially we're looking for grants to pay for the initial salary for the 18 months.
Yeah.
But is it so that as going forward it becomes a successful venture, that it pays for itself, so that we don't have to be fundraising for it or applying for grants? Because I think that was the initial one, sorry, Mary, that I think when it came through, but that was my understanding. I could be wrong on that.
That wasn't my understanding, but maybe there might have been some cross wires. I don't know. I'm not sure where that sustainability for the salary would come from. I mean, you know, we're talking about making the community centres more sustainable, you know, in terms of you know, more groups coming through them, more involvement from residents and the committees and things, so that it's not falling just to a tiny number of people to do that. In terms of how we would make the salary for that person, I'm not sure how where that would come from, actually.
So potentially that could always be looking for grants to cover those salaries going forward, is that?
Yes, but I mean, you know, I guess some of the thinking behind it is that, and I don't mean it to sound like, oh, we parachute and we solve all the problems and then we disappear, because that's not, you know, obviously that's not what we want to portray. But the thinking kind of is that, you know, there's support provided, and that might require another 2 years, or, you know, maybe another 3 years, but the groups are, you know, set up, people feel that they're more part of their community, there's things they can get involved in, you know, there's things for young people to do, even if that's not down to the community builder, it's through connecting you know, young people with services that are already there that, you know, maybe they didn't know about. So in terms of the salary for the community builder, I'm not sure where the money, you know, because you're not, it's not like a community cafe or something, you know, where you're
that's what
making the money back.
Just unsure. So no, that's fine. Thank you. So that might be something, more information we might need for the going forward, but that's brilliant. Thank you. If no one else has any questions for Mary, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming in. We'll carry on the debate, but we're free, you're free to leave. And I'd just like to say, you know, whatever extra information that you feel you require, if, you know, I've made a note of the project plan and the budget breakdown. I'll talk to the project board about job description and the funding levels and you know, various other
items that have been mentioned, but you know, it would be great if we could make sure you have the information you need before the next meeting. So I'll try and, you know, do whatever I can to facilitate that.
Thank you very much for that, Mary.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone. I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Does as we are just discussing this, obviously we've just had a big discussion on that. Does anyone want any further discussion on this? Or are we just going to propose that we take this to full council? Councillor Holmes, are you hands up for something?
I just feel in order for it to go to the full council, I'd like to have had the information, the additional detail, more definition about what the project involves before that meeting, so that we can give it, you know, full consideration. Because I can see, you know, if it becomes successful, or if, you know, they're looking to fund match, I think we need to understand the implications of starting this project. It would have to be sustained, and what the council's role would be is being perceived and is part of that. So I would really like to see a lot more detail before the next council meeting.
Thank you. Well, hopefully Murray will come back with that information. Does anyone else wish to, Councillor Fradgley?
I completely agree with what Councillor Coles has just said. We don't have sufficient information at the moment to make a solid decision. My problem is, as I actually raised, is the timescale in this. If we do get more information before the next town council meeting, it might be better for this group to have a quick meeting to actually see and digest it in some way, because town council meetings are quite big, broad, and if we don't meet face to face, you know, half of us aren't going to be able to sort of contribute to the debate. So I see the town council meeting as being problematic to have the proper discussion, to make the proper decision. You know, it seems like a terrific idea, but it lacks definition at the moment.
Right, yeah, no, it's a very valid point. So I think we'll try and get that in.
Chair, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Can I recognise all these very interested hosts who are in themselves extremely and well thought of and credible bodies. I think there's been a miss here. They should have been providing their concept in detail before it's presented to us and others, rather like the way we managed the town centre project. You know, you get that detail together and they say, we want a tender and this is what we believe it should be, and that would have provided all the detail. Now it might be there, we might be missing something, but there seems to be all that detail, and it's not Mari's fault. She came along and she spoke about what she knew, but those gaps, those organisations, if they want to be involved in leading it, and you know, that money's going to be flooding to them so they can manage it or facilitate it, whatever they're doing, lead it. I'm surprised that they have to wait so far down the line. They should have presented, and people should be looking at this now, those wise and clever people, and saying, right, it's organisation A, B, C or D that have got the best offer, the best people in place, and are most likely to deliver this project to its biggest effect. And we're waiting for them now to provide that information so they can be selected, and that's just going to delay it even longer, or decisions will be made hastily to fit the timetable. So I'm not sure where that gap has occurred, or maybe that's the way things are being done in local government, and that's why we see these projects come and go and come and go without constancy.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, for me, obviously, it is a pilot project, and I think, just as Richard's commented there are lots of projects at the moment in various other areas which are coming to the table in very similar situations, where people have concepts and nothing else behind that to secure funding, and this maybe is a little similar to that. But obviously, certainly the areas that they're talking about, I've done some work in there recently, and I would agree that both of those wards really are sadly lacking in facilities for their community. However, there are other community catalyst projects around the country that are already in operation, that we can see what they've created in other areas. And certainly I can distribute their information through to everybody if you want to take a look at it, to see how these have influenced other communities in the country. But maybe the people who've just done the presentation should have done the same research and utilised it as a selling pitch.
Thank you. Councillor Howe?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just echo Mr. Mayor's comments there. I think that, yeah, I think that sums up my view of this. I think it's a pilot project. I think I would be, I'm supportive of it, but I represent one of the areas included, so I appreciate I'm in a privileged position there. I think this is important. I think it is the right thing to do. I would like to see a bit more structure in the proposal, a bit more information provided. So I look forward to receiving that shortly. And I would like to see a bit more involvement. To echo some of Councillor Voss's comments, I would like to see some involvement from one of those organisations to kind of wrap some of their identity around it, which is why I asked a question about the Town Trust. But yeah, I think this is a pilot project. This is vastly needed in those communities. And I'm broadly in support of the project, and I think this as an experiment to see what a wider participation could look like in the future, fully in support. And as part of that funding, with that invitation onto the project board, I think we could absolutely help shape it and steer it in the direction that we want it to go.
Thank you. Yes, just to echo Councillor Howe as well on that, yes, it is an important one. However, at this moment, we don't have enough information, as we're only being asked to discuss it. Unless anyone has anything else further, I think the way forward at the moment is to get that information that Mary said should go, and then if it comes in time for full council, or if we want maybe an extra meeting, it might be something we need to facilitate before full town council. I think a lot of that will depend on if we get the information in time or not. So we're happy. So there's nothing to vote on this. It was purely a discussion. So again, just appreciate Mary's time tonight, and it's an interesting presentation. It's definitely something that's needed. It's just how we take this forward. We need that information first. So thank you. Right. So we're going to go backwards now. If we do that, Councillor Wojcik, you're more than welcome to stay, but thank you for joining us either way. Thank you. Bye. So going back now to agenda item number 7, to approve the draft open minutes of the Community Services Committee meeting held on the 6th of April. They have been circulated. Has everyone had a chance to look at that, and are we happy to approve? Please raise your hands if you are, your real hands. We have that, that's unanimous. And number 8, to adopt the draft notice of subgroup, I'll say that again, subgroup meetings reporting to the committee services. They've already been circulated, so we've got the environmental strategy panel, which was formerly the Climate Change Emergency Panel, that was held on the 28th of April and the 2nd of June this year. Are you happy with those notes that have come around? Show of hands. And 8.2 is to adopt the Community Hall Working Party notes that were held on the 17th of May this year.
Hold on, it wasn't held. It wasn't held, unless I'm wrong.
No, that was June the 7th. There was a meeting on the 17th of May, and then there was a meeting on June the 7th, which wasn't held.
Yeah, that one. The 17th of May is held.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Sorry.
Are you happy with them?
Confused by them.
Thank you. Brilliant. I've just lost my second bit of my minutes now. Where did I go? When you go, we're not supposed to have papers, and I've just put my papers. There we go. Sorry. Thank you. Agenda item number 9, budget review, Appendix A. Has everyone had a chance to look at those? And are there any comments? Are we asking for comments? on these, or are we just approving this, Vic? You know,
It's just a review, and obviously it's very early on in the year, so if there were any questions, if anybody wanted to send those via email, that's absolutely fine.
Are there any questions on those, or we're happy just to note? Noted. Okay, thank you. Right, moving on to agenda item 10.1. This is from the Town Clerk's open report. We've got the first 10.1 is to review the grant application process for free use of the Town Hall, Appendix B. Vic, have we got anything to note on that? Obviously, you've seen all the notes in the open report. Has anyone got any questions for Vic, Councillor Howe?
Sorry, is there? I think these are mixed up in the agenda and in the notes, which is why I'm confused. Sorry, they're different. They're different way around in the open report to the notes. Sorry. Yeah, just to say that this was just a starter for 10 proposal for questions to ask. It's using the Microsoft Forms platform, so we get all the responses digitally, and we can set up notifications to notify the various parties that need to be made aware of those dates for free use. And if we think we need any other information, then yeah, happy to append that onto the form, but just wanted to make it relatively straightforward for local organisations to request that.
Yeah, the forms were really good on that, and the way I hadn't seen the previous forms, but these look really good. I don't know how they compare to previous forms. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Howe, who's obviously put a lot of work into this? Vic, on these? Are we all happy with them? We're just reviewing them for now. Any questions? What? We don't really need to. We're just reviewing, so there's no voting on this.
I propose that we move them forward. I think this also touches on the current working group looking at town hall tariffs, and there's I guess
You've just muted yourself.
Time to think. If those dates that for free use become available, then we can make that process quite straightforward, as long as it matches the criteria currently set out.
Yeah. So is everyone happy to move that forward and accept Councillor Howe's proposal? Yeah. Can we have a show of hands? Right. Thank you. And on to 10.2 to review. Yeah, I think you're right. It is all mixed up. To review, no, sorry, 10.3 to I can't say that today. Sorry, Councillor Jackson, I was going to call you Mr. Melvin. Councillor Jackson, did you put your hand up for the previous item, or?
No, I was going to talk about the grant applications for 22-23, which was the open report and the agenda are the wrong way around.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
The town hall. Yeah, 10.1. Apologies. Yeah, so we're looking. Yes. This mixed around. So free use of the town hall. So now the grant application process. Yeah, I'm reading it from the open report. So yeah, so we're moving forward the free use of the town hall and then the grant application. So yeah. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that the principle of having a collaborative approach between the town council and the town trust over the financial audit of the books it hasn't happened because of COVID. But I had a word with Rebecca at the town trust today, and in principle, she's still happy that that's a way forward. So obviously the town trust have the expertise in a way of doing the financial audit of accounts. So if we want to go down that route, that's something we can progress and we can agree the details at a later stage.
Thank you for that. Anyone else got any comments on that? Councillor Howe?
Sorry, I keep using my real hand rather than my virtual hand.
I'm trying to look.
It's a problem I have every day. Yeah, I think there probably just needs to be some updated wording in the actual application. So I think that any applications over 25,000 would come to the Community Services Committee now. So I think there's just a few updates to that to the text, but in general, I still, yeah, in my opinion, the general guidance and the restrictions that we're putting on it, I still am broadly in support of. So I think we should just maybe as an action, I can just jot down some feedback on just updating the language in it, but broadly, I still think it's fine.
Yeah, I think it is as a technically a community building. I think it is an important facility that we have to consider. So, so we've been asked to determine the grant application for free use for the town hall for 21-22 and decide.
Sorry, I'm talking about the grant application process.
The grant. Yeah, and that's on the bottom of that is to determine. Yeah, sorry, it is my fault because it's been I'm reading it the wrong way.
Sorry, we're on 10.2 on the agenda, but item number 1 on
item number 1. Yeah, so we've already committed, as you said, to spring housing. We've committed that 25,000, as you mentioned. So the sum will automatically be included in the 22-23 budget.
And just as a final comment from me, it makes sense that the application for this process for larger amounts of money is this more kind of submitted report application, lots of pros, as opposed to for free use, which is smaller amounts, quicker to agree, yeah. Everyone's happy, which are why I think it's fine to have this documented format.
Yeah, and that's a good application process, I think, that have been put together. Councillor Coles.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if we've got sort of like a form for applying it and explaining it, we don't actually at the moment have a process within the council. You know, if we publish this, we don't actually have a process or a budget or a consideration. If we have 16 applications, this is beyond the free use of the town hall. If we have 16 applications for a £25,000 grant, what process are we following of how many we're going to grant, how we're going to evaluate them, what principles are we going to be judging them against?
Essentially, we need a scoring matrix.
We need well, before we do any of that, yeah. How many grants are we making? How much money are we spending?
What's our overall
Is this
budget?
Now one of our primary functions?
Yeah, which shouldn't be.
We need to put that in place first.
Councillor Howe, do you want to come back on that? And then
I don't think it needs much process to that, because it's a request, it's not a mandate, so we can turn around and say no. I think those requests come here, and the financial process is that if we don't, we don't have any planned budget in the current financial year for this, so the earliest without a violent and kind of escalation to the full town council would have to go into the next year's budget anyway. And so
but funding, if we are making a grant making procedure, we have to make it fair and even-handed. Therefore, anybody who would be likely to apply for any of this needs to be aware of it, and therefore you will have presumably several bodies applying for a grant. We can't sort of say, oh, you've heard about it, this one's just popped up, do we like it? Yes, no. We need the criteria to judge against, but it also needs to be done in a balanced way against anybody who might, literally body, who would wish to make an application, if that's what we're doing. So, you start the process not by seeing what rocks up, but saying, okay, well, we've got 200,000 we're going to give away or £25,000 once a year we're going to be giving as a grant. You make that process public and you give a timetable for people to apply for, so that everybody has a fair whack at applying for it. I don't think we can do it on a, yes, well, we'll pop some out of reserves because this one's turned up, because in 3 months' time, an organisation could perfectly validly say, well, we didn't know you were doing that, or we would have applied for it. And that would be reasonable. We've got to make access fair across any organisation who would want to apply for it. I don't think we can run it as a reactive process against what turns up if we are becoming a big grant-making body. you know, these are large sums of money. I think we have to have a balanced and fair and funded process behind it in order for to have anybody having fair access to it. And I think before any of that conversation comes, we need to decide how much we're going to likely to make available in grants, and that should be built into the budget first, and then we see how much we've got, and then you build the process around it. Because I think if you are making grants available, you need to say, yes, we only do grants over 25,000, but I'm sorry, there's going to be 2 a year, and your application has to be in by April the 31st.
Yeah, we absolutely agree with that. That we do need to have a cap on that, and as you said, is that we have to have those stipulations out there. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I thought we'd discussed this as a previous meeting about having a procedure and a method of doing these grants. And Councillor Ian Fradgley, if I remember rightly, said we'd already got those in place from previously when Town Council had done this previously. So I would imagine all those things that we've just mentioned would have been in place when these grants were issued prior to them moving over to Town Trust.
But the point is, we haven't decided that's what we're doing. Have we decided that's what we're doing? Because we were a grant making body, then we weren't a grant making. Are we now a grant making body? Is that process in place, and how much money are we going to spend on it?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because at the moment we're not a grant. I'm actually going to, although you weren't the next to go up, Councillor Fradgley, I think you want to come back on that. I'll bring you in now.
Yes, I mean, when I was first a town councillor, we were a grant making body, and we used to give grants to all sorts of individuals and all sorts of projects that came forward. And we then decided, and it was a decision some years ago, that Town Trust took over that responsibility of giving grants to individuals and to most of the charities in the town. They've got the money, they actually have the criteria, they actually fund major things across the town. What the town at that point decided that it should do was to support the civic events that the Town Trust did not want to support and still doesn't really want to support. And that's mainly Stratford in Bloom, Christmas lights, and organisations like that really are a civic duty, and we decided should be a civic responsibility. If we're going to go down the grant giving track and actually put things like Christmas lights and Stratford in Bloom against other organisations that can actually go to the Town Trust for funding, it does actually put things like that in total jeopardy. So that's my view.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. I agree with that. Councillor Jackson?
Sorry, exactly the point that I was going to make. We are not the Christmas lights, Stratford in Bloom, legacy issues. We are not a grant-making organisation, and we don't want to be, in my view. We mustn't put ourselves up in competition against the Town Trust. Just won't work.
Thank you, Councillor Voss.
I'll be even blunter. It's a no from me. We just don't even go there. We could bankrupt the town hall overnight very quickly. We should ring fence, in my view, Stratford in Bloom and the Christmas lights on the basis that they produce an appropriate application each year, which shows serious intent, organisation and commitment to achieving the objectives which they are setting up. Those are the only two. Then, I mean, I don't think that we gave a grant to, in my view, the Fred Winter Centre. I think what we did is we supported a very necessary initiative, and that's not quite the same as a grant on a one-off, and there's always capacity to do that. And this is entirely different, as we all know, from free use of the town hall. They're not even connected. That's nothing to do with grants. That's to do with, but we should absolutely not even let the cat out of any bag and imply that we are a grant making organisation, because if we do and we don't get it right, then we risk all sorts of things, not just financial ruin, but potential legal action against us. So I would absolutely eliminate now, on reflection, I've been struggling with this for a while in my own mind, but it's clear to me we should not get into any other grants, period.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Howe?
Yeah, just to say that, yeah, we absolutely are a grant making organisation, because we make grants to Christmas lights and Stratford and Bloom. Like you can't twist that any other way. That's what we do. And we're talking about the very process that those organisations use to secure those grants. This is the exact form that they use to get those grants from us. So we are a grant making organisation. Well, this is the exact form that the Fred Winter Centre used to get those grants from us as well. So that is exactly what has happened. And for Councillor Cole's point of view, if we're looking at a fair and open process, I'd say, oh, we don't provide grants other than those two organisations is not a fair and transparent process. So I don't think you can have both.
Thank you, Councillor Franklin.
Going back to the point that I was making, the decision that was made some years ago was that any money that was actually given from the town council was for civic events, and I do think foundation. I do think the Fred Winter comes under that heading. It is for the civic benefit and welfare of the people of the town. I'm a little bit more concerned about the grant we're looking at today, or we've just been looking at, because that's really not for the whole town as Lights, Bloom, Fred Winter is. It's for specific sections with the potential for being the whole town in the future. And I do agree with Liz that we've actually got to think carefully about how you frame the wording, that you restrict what money we give to funding for civic funding that benefits the whole town. I think that is the issue.
Thank you. Councillor Ross?
So I think that what we've done in the past and what we start to become clear about for the future, we should not be guided that we have to follow the past, and using words like grants in themselves causes a problem. We could quite easily have 40 grants of £5,000 or 50 of £2,000. We would be absolutely financially ruined by that. So we have to re-establish exactly what we call, what we designate, and how Stratford and Bloom and the Christmas lights apply for this support funding. And I don't think we necessarily need to assume they are grants per se, but support, and that's different. You can shake your head all you like. We do not, if we go into being I give you 3 years of being a grant providing body, and the town hall will be bankrupt. And it will just not work. And we've got an organisation, and I'm sorry to say, 60-70 million pounds worth of assets, plus the ability to give £3, £4, £5 million a year if they really wanted to. Don't confuse the picture. We just have got to stop this now, and we've got to recognise what we're here to do and what we're capable of doing. And if that means changing the wording or the way we approach, or indeed tuning up the application forms for funding, that's a different matter. But I wouldn't go any further than that. It's the road to ruin.
Councillor Coles?
Yeah, sorry, I'll keep it quick. I'll just say I agree with Councillor Fletchley. I agree with Councillor Voss. I don't think it is the council's function to be a grant-making body. We do support civic things like Bloom and the lights, which are partly historical, but again, I beg pardon, I can't remember if it's Councillor Voss or Bradley. It's a civic job. It's a whole town job. That is our job. Specifically targeted grant-making process is not our function. We don't have the mechanism to judge and balance competing grants for our funds. We haven't earmarked funds for that, and we don't have really specifically a fund to fund grant making as such, because those funds went with the town trust, and they are well geared up for doing that job. I think it is perfectly reasonable to have a dialogue with Stratford and Broome and Christmas Lights to see what their business case are for those grants, so for those grants, whatever, so that we know we are giving the town council money and it is being well spent and well used and delivering something for the town. But I think that grant making generally is a bit of a rabbit hole for us. I don't think it's necessary. We have the free use of the town hall, which we are balancing against the use of using the town hall to raise income to support our primary function. And I don't see the need to have a discussion about grant making because in a broader context, because we don't do it. It's not our job.
No, thank you. So, I mean, well, yeah, I'm being asked to review the grant application process. I think one of the big things that seems to be coming out of that is we need to review the word grant. We do have, as you said, the town trust that does provide the grants. There's 3 of us on here that sit on the town trust. So we know what that application procedure goes through. So I think that's where we need to review. Does anyone want to make a proposal, remembering that obviously these are recommendations that we're passing forward at this point? Is there a proposal someone would like to make on reviewing this? Councillor Franklin?
I just simply propose that we actually, I don't know, I propose that a small group get together to actually come up with a recommendation for rewording the function of monies that go out from the town hall to town bodies.
Thank you. Councillor Voss, are you seconding
Yeah,
that?
I certainly would, and I would think that one of the ways we could manage it, civic support.
Yeah.
You know, there are lots of ways we can flex this around, and if that means we change, and if that, you know, if we're breaking a few eggs to make the perfect omelette, we'll have to do it, I'm afraid. As we've done in many other areas, and we've got it right. We've tried our best to get it right for the benefit of the whole town. This has always been a sticky issue, I think, and it's probably not, yeah, okay, so it's probably now time we do crack on. We probably do move forward with this in a constructive and progressive way.
Yeah, thank you. Vic, I can just check with you. We are, as this is a recommendation, are we still voting on this?
We haven't been asked to vote, have we?
We haven't been asked to vote.
I think the proposal, I can add that to.
We can just that we review. Is that, are you happy?
Can I just clarify what Councillor Fradgley said, that a proposal of a small group, like a task and finish group? Or
Yes, task and finish group with perhaps 1 meeting duration. It shouldn't take long.
Just to reword the
grant application.
To review the wording.
Yeah. And that's, if I might say, exactly what Councillor Howe understood task and finish groups were about. That when we had these sticky issues, a group of collegiate minds would come together, deal with it, sort it, move it on, end of task and finish group. So it's an example of how this reformation of our committees and subgroups could work very effectively.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Happy with those wordings, Vic?
Yeah, that's fine.
Do we need to vote on that, or are we just happy to? We don't. I think we need to just vote on that. No, Sarah saying no. Thank you, Dan Clark. Thank you. Right. Thank you for that. Very good. We are getting through this. Moving on to 10.3 to retrospectively approve the cost of the new installed dog bin on Avenue Ward. The District Council has advised that there's a charge for installation of £375 and that the annual charge for emptying it is currently £114. This was a new bin installed in Barley Close. I assume that's near the children's play area. And we're just retrospectively asked to approve this expenditure and that the funds for this purpose are in the budget of the 21-22 budget. Are we happy to approve that? Councillor Howard looks
Still.
yes. Councillor Howard, before we
Sorry, are we charged the annual fee? I didn't think we were.
That's what we do. We get charged. Vic, can you?
Yes, so the district council has advised that there is a charge for installation of £375 and the annual charge for emptying is currently £114.
We pay, that's for each bin within the wards that we pay. That's what
the town council pays the annual charge.
town council does, yeah.
Where it comes in.
Okay. That's news to me.
Bradley?
In the past, the district used to emptied a certain number. That historic number is still, I understand, emptied for free. It's any new one that we bring in accrues the cost for
cost. Yeah, that's my understanding too. Councillor Rolfe?
I think we need to kind of look at this again. I mean, I'm going through, somebody's asked me for a bin. We've got a lot of new developments come forward, you know, and it can't all be reliant on the town council. We can't constantly be able to afford these sort of prices. What should happen at planning stage, in my belief, is that developers should be putting bins on their developments and around their developments. I've got one development that they put 2 bins within, but because of the configuration of that development, they need one outside one entrance and outside the other entrance. It never existed before, but oh no, the developer doesn't pay that. We have to pay it. And the district council just won't even entertain the idea, simply won't entertain it. And I do think we need to review this, and we need to go to the district and say, look, we can't keep affording these extra bins for these extra developments, and that the district council should be made to ensure that bins are put in at development stage. Sorry, that was very lengthy, but I get quite passionate about this because, I mean, as Councillor House said, you know, it's news to him. I mean, it's not news to me, but every time I look at it, I think, wow, are we paying that sort of money every year? I just find it quite extraordinary.
And is that a quick question following on from that, if someone can answer, I don't know. The annual charge for emptying the bins, as Councillor Fradley just said, historically, there's a certain amount that's sort of free. In the new developments, does every new bin, do we pay that? Not necessarily the installation fee, but the emptying fee. Is that?
No, we don't. No, we don't pay it on those that are put within the new development become part of that development, and the district council pay for it. It's any extras.
It's additionals outside.
Every new development needs extras.
Extra bins. So absolutely, that looks like that needs to go within the planning process and something maybe
absolutely.
On planning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Councillor Voss?
Well, so just to say, we do need to approve it because it's happened, and to say that Councillor Warrenhouse had a devil's own job bouncing between developers and, as you say, the district, trying to get what we all understand now is a necessary facility, and probably there are not enough dog bins around either. So you're quite right, Councillor Rolfe, some kind of resolution has to be dealt with, because, you know, there could quite easily be demand for another 50 dog bins in and around Stratford, and that will bankrupt us as well if we carry on like this. And developers have a responsibility from the huge profits they make as part of, you know, I don't know whether it comes SIL, S106 or whatever it is, you know, is it that kind of approach? But yeah, so we do need to approve this. There's no point in not doing it. It's happened and it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. The question that is on the agenda is to retrospectively approve the cost of the new bin. So to save time, Councillor Rolfe, do you have 1 point? But to save time, otherwise we'll.
No, I was just going to say I approved.
Yeah, we'll move on from that. So can we have a show of hands for the approval? Okay, that's everyone. Councillor, how are you abstaining?
I'll abstain from that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to 10.4, to consider the request from Stratford-upon-Avon School for the advice for helping with supplying a second DFib for the school and the community. Again, we received an email from I think it was one of the wardens, of the school. I have since had an email, just bear with me while I bring that up, from him, and what he is they're actually asking for, and this does go back now to our grants discussion. The email does say the new one is for the front of the school, which will be easily accessible for all. They have planned to grow the current number of pupils from 1,600 to 2,050 pupils over the next couple of years. The cost for a DFIB is around £1,200. So what they're asking for is financial help from the town council. Any of that would be gratefully received. Councillor Rolfe, come to you first.
I'm going to sound really mean here. Why should we pay? The school can ask the parents that they have a PTA of some sort. All the primary schools that I've ever dealt with have all had to fundraise for their own defibrillator. Why can't the school? It's going at the front of the school. The school's expanding. I'm sorry, but I once we start giving this sort of money away, I think there'll be other organisations that would be begging us for defibrillators, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. Councillor Voss.
You know, I must be the most difficult person here. I think it's atrocious that anybody but the DFE, the Department of Education, should pay for this. You know, we know now it's taken another huge international cardiac incident to wake us up to it, hasn't it? Mm-hmm. And I think it is a shocking thing that you would even open. It's like saying, you know, the school are going to be looking for support to put a first aid kit. It's the first part of first aid. The school, through the Department of Education, should have this provided. You know, where do we go next with this? This is an appalling indictment of the way national funding is provided for something which is now absolutely essential and basic. So I would be saying, you know, this is something that lead authorities should be lobbying national government for, and quick as well.
Thank you. Councillor Fradgley?
I think it's an academy, it's a business. This is part of their business plan. I think it's an essential part of their business plan, and they need to actually provide the funds for it. We cannot open, we've just had that discussion about what we can and cannot do with money. And I think putting a DFIB onto a school, an academy, which isn't even county, the responsibility of the county, is sadly a no-go area.
Thank you. Councillor Coles?
I absolutely agree. And of course, there isn't just a question of getting it in the first place. Do you have fairly considerable running costs as well? So having done one, would we then be required to support running costs? Yeah. Speaking as somebody who has to get money out of the DFE, I can assure you it's not a very easy task.
Yeah, absolutely. From my point of view as well, obviously, you know, I'm a big advocate for defibrillators, but again, with this school, I understand they're trying to give it or make it available for the community, but as Councillor Rolfe said, you know, there's fundraising within the schools. If they are expanding to over 2,000 pupils, £1 per pupil, they could fund that. We can do that. As ward councillor, I will be offering my services as full fundraising events, but that would be within the school, not as sort of a town council. Again, this goes back to what we were talking about with grants. If we start that, I know Bishopton are looking to fund a DFIB as well. You know, if we give to one, do we need to give to another? And this is once we start, and then who becomes responsible for it, who's responsible for the upkeep. The upkeep of a DFIB does cost around in the £300 a year mark. So that's what we need to look at. So how do we want to take this forward? Does somebody, we want to consider the request for a DFIB? Who would like to make a proposal on that? Or a final comment on that? Councillor Coles?
Well, I propose that we thank them for contacting us, and we thoroughly approve of the initiative, but unfortunately it isn't possible for us to fund it.
Thank you. Are we all in agreement with that? Can we have just a show of hands? Thank you for that. Vic, I'm happy, or maybe I'll go through Sarah, and as I've been in communication with them, I'm happy to talk to them as well, but I will offer my services from a fundraising point of view as ward councillor. But I agree with, thank you. Right, moving on, 10.5, we've received a quotation from Time Assured for the works of the American Fountain Clock. Charles, do you have anything to say to that?
Not particularly, Madam Chairman. Both of these things are in need of being done, and it would be practical to do them both at the same time. But so I would obviously support the recommendation that the work is put in hand.
Thank you. Councillor Howe.
This might be a really stupid observation, and or it might be I don't know, like unthinkable. But do we need the clocks to work in the American Fountain? I don't. I think it's worth sort of asking that question.
Charles, can we come back to you on that one?
Well, it is a public clock. We have an obligation, as it's a public clock. Obviously, a clock is only useful if it works, and it was given to the town back in 1887, and it's been working ever since 1887. So I would say, yes, we do have an obligation to keep it working.
Thank you, Charles. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We did actually, Councillor, have a number of people who contacted us several weeks ago when the clock wasn't actually working correctly, when it hadn't been changed. So there is a lot of public interest about that clock.
Right, it's right twice a day. So
I think it's this, I have to admit it's the same, because at some point, I'm not sure if it's working now, but the Guild Chapel clock wasn't right, and that to me, I was looking at going,
Yeah.
I wanted that to work. So I think it is an important feature of the town. So we're being asked to recommend that the work is undertaken as soon as possible, and the costs are funded by the budget from the designated reserve. Are we all in agreement with that?
sorry, can I
Oh,
just
sorry, yeah, Councillor
add
Howe.
an extra just point into that? I think when these things come, and they always seem to be a surprise, and they shouldn't be a surprise. We should know our state and the community assets need maintaining. It's the same with the town hall. We know we need to do a review every 5 years or whatever it is, 15 years. And yeah, I think we should just have a better budgetary process for this, so these things don't come as surprises. I think it's something that we need to do.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. But I think we're all in agreement. Can we just have a show of hands again, just so Vic can see it? Yeah, that's unanimous, Vic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, 10.6, to note the update on the internal and external works plan for the town hall.
So Mr. Mayor and Councillor Jackson were in attendance this morning at the pre-contract meeting with Messenger, the contractor who's going to be working on the town hall from the 19th of July. The work is estimated to take 20 weeks, and that takes us through, I think, until December the 2nd. So we will have scaffolding up for that time.
So that clashes with the light switch on.
Yes, but the Christmas lights are aware of that, and they have a plan of how they can switch the lights on.
Okay.
Quite a significant date then, 19th of July, isn't it, for various reasons?
It is, yeah.
Very auspicious.
Boy, we can do it. Right, so we're just being asked to note it. Any questions? Oh, Sarah, sorry.
Just a quick update on the statue as well. We spoke to the conservator. I think he's the only one in the country that actually does the work. And that was a very, very successful meeting with him, a telephone call with him. And he's coming up on the 20th, Vic, isn't he?
Yes, Tuesday.
July.
Yes.
Meet with Messenger so that we can coordinate the whole thing. So it's like two separate projects, but they'll be coordinated. So I think we all came away from the meeting this morning feeling very positive.
Definitely.
That's very good. That's really good news. So we've just been asked to note everyone happy and noting that. Brilliant. Thank you. See, we are getting through this. We've done 10.7, so that's a good thing. So 10.8 to respond to the proposal from Stratford-upon-Avon Safer Streets. I think we are just being asked.
Oh, have we not done community halls?
Yeah, that was the presentation from Mary Darwin.
Of course, I'm sorry.
It's been a long meeting. So we've been asked to respond to the proposal. Has everyone had a chance to look at it? I can see the questions that obviously Sarah has asked. Are there any questions? I don't know if Sarah, she's there, if you want to jump in on this.
I haven't had other information from Sam, so that's all that I have had.
That's all.
There were a number of questions in my mind when I saw it, and I don't think that we haven't had the answers really. No. And those were just the two things that immediately sprang to my mind when I read it. What will happen if the money isn't raised? Is it just going to die a death? I suspect it very well maybe. So once again, I think we don't have the detail. We don't have the.
No. So I think at this point, how do we want? So how does Councillor Howe?
I think we should be in support of this. We're all, yeah, I think we make a contribution to the CCTV. I think it's something that's important for the safety of the town. Does a question for the town clerk, is a letter in support of this appropriate at this time?
Yes, we could do that in principle, but obviously it is in principle in so much as we want the finer detail and really I think from a CCTV point of view, the CCTV costs the town council a lot of money now, a lot of money, and every time they put in a camera it costs us more. And so just for us to say, yeah, that's a great idea without really knowing how many cameras, is it going ahead, and what will be the knock-on effect to us, I really think it's just support in principle with the idea, but we need to know more.
I think in terms of coming up with a unified front in terms of to secure funding, I think that would be useful. And yeah, subject any kind of ongoing budgetary concerns would have to be reviewed again.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie, I've seen you. We've got Councillor Voss first and Councillor Coles, then yourself.
Just to say that this is an area again where there is a desperate need to manage and to prevent and to control criminal activity, and that's the responsibility of the PCC. Now, whilst we have an obligation to provide some support, it seems to me this is just another area where others' responsibilities are being sidelined to be funded by another organisation from an office which already has a budget of £3 or £4 million. And I genuinely think, and it's noted here about the funding, that we should be making sure that the PCC fulfills his or her obligation. And we do have an annual presentation from the PCC, at least one presentation. We should make this point rigorously as a town council to the PCC that this funding has to be provided, or else we will see a growth in crime which could otherwise potentially be prevented.
Thank you. Councillor Coles?
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with Councillor Voss. And in terms of the sort of open-ended commitment to the change, maybe we should perhaps look, I don't know how long the agreement we have with the provision of CCTV, but maybe we should be making a commitment in terms of actual figures rather than the percentage, and then we would know better for planning purposes what we were actually committing to over the years.
Councillor Mackenzie?
My concern is more CCTV. I think it's a great idea, but is there actually anyone manning this CCTV? I know from my own experience of my own son, whose bike was stolen twice with CCTV looking at it, and nobody ever followed it up, whether that was lack of people viewing it, or I mean, if you can have CCTV, but if you've not actually got people who will review it, go through it, it's pointless.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think we all obviously have a responsibility to contribute towards keeping the safe street in Stratford for all the people in the community. I know the public consultation has already begun on this, and I think once that's actually been completed, I think they'll probably come back to everyone with some more detail on this project, and maybe we assess it then.
I agree. I think at this point, we should be looking, as we said, in principle, we support it because the safety of the town is paramount. But I think we do require further details before we can give a figure on it. Is that the gist of what everyone agrees with? Yeah, can we look at that? And yeah, are you happy with that, Vic?
Yes.
Thank you. On we have to note the debt of £168.43 from the Stratford Sport Cash from our support group. Councillor Rolfe?
Yeah, can I just have clarification from the town clerk, if I may? This debt, is it half? Because we are in partnership, or we're in partnership with the town trust. Is it half of what the town trust are also paying off, if you like?
Regrettably, I have absolutely no idea, councillor. But we have got a meeting on the 13th, haven't we? So I think we can just clarify that.
Yes, I think that would be good, because we are in partnership, and I know it's a very small amount of money, but if that they can perhaps pay half of that, then all to the good, in my opinion.
If I may, just on there as well, I assume the cash was because we were dealing with the cash clients, so that was ours.
What it was people that didn't have bank details, weren't able to bank transfer the money that they owed us back. Yeah. They literally only have cash. They don't have internet banking to be able to pay back the money.
Yeah, so that was the one, because I know we were using the council card for a while, so I assume it was those transactions.
That is from the town council debit card that I believe Councillor Curtis was using on behalf of
the shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these residents didn't have internet banking to be able to pay the money back.
Yeah. And I do believe, and I know we'll find out on the 13th in our next meeting, that there is still money owed to the town trust from their shopping as well. So the half and half might go, if we go push for that, might work against us if we have to pay their half as well. But yeah, Councillor Rolfe?
Yeah, in terms of going back to these residents, I don't think so, in my opinion. I mean, if it was thousands, then obviously, but I really don't think we should go back to the residents and ask them for money.
At this point, I think all we're being asked to do is to note it, so we can note it. But I think maybe after we'll take it to the next support meeting next week and find out some more details, and maybe it might need to come back to find out.
Yeah. I mean, it does say that members are asked whether these residents should now be approached.
Yeah, yeah.
I think about the money. That's why I was commenting. I don't think they should be approached.
No. Vic, do we know who?
I don't believe, I don't personally know who they are. I think what it is from a council's point of view, we just need to be able to make our accountant aware of what we want to do. So whether you want to ask them to pay it back or whether we as a council are going to forfeit that amount. And if you want to go to the meeting with the town trust and then let us know so we can actually let the accountant know.
Yeah, so are you happy for us to hold off on that? We'll note the amount.
Yeah.
We'll find out, and I think, as Councillor Rolfe said, possibly at this point asking for it isn't something we're going to do, but maybe it's something that the town trust can contribute towards. But if we can note that at the next meeting on the 13th with the Stratford support group. Everyone happy with that? Right, thank you. That comes to the end. So there's the date and venue of the next meeting. The next virtual meeting of the Community Services Committee will take place. I assume we're still going to be virtual at that point, although now with the changes, still don't know. So at the moment, it's a virtual committee meeting at 6 p.m. on the 26th of October, or 6:30 if physical meetings are being held at that point. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending, and thank you at those at home who are possibly watching this meeting. Good night.
Thank you.
Can I ask them?